1968. A Navy SEAL walks into a base exchange in Vietnam and buys a pair of Levi's jeans and a package of women's pantyhose. The clerk stares at him. The SEAL says nothing. He doesn't need to. He's heading back into the Rung Sat Special Zone, one of the most hostile pieces of terrain on Earth. And what he just bought is going to keep him alive in ways the official United States military gear simply cannot. This is not a joke. This is not a strange footnote. This is documented history. American soldiers and special operators in Vietnam quietly abandoned pieces of their official equipment and replaced them with items bought from care packages, department stores, and letters home. Pantyhose, blue jeans, sanitary pads, women's underwear, enemy uniforms taken off dead soldiers. Each one solved a real problem that was getting men hurt or killed, and that the military's official supply chain had failed to fix. Today, we go through all of it. Issued pants in the swamps. Why pantyhose stopped leeches that regular fabric couldn't. Why sanitary pads ended up inside combat boots and under backpack straps. Why some men stopped wearing underwear entirely. And why the deadliest scouts in the war walked point wearing the enemy's own uniform, carrying the enemy's own rifle. None of this happened by accident, and none of it was random. To understand why, you need to understand the ground these men were fighting on. The Mekong Delta and the Rung Sat Special Zone, a flooded maze of tidal rivers and mangrove swamp southeast of Saigon, 400 square kilometers of mud that swallowed conventional equipment and conventional thinking whole. The gear the Army designed for Europe and Korea simply did not survive contact with this place. And some of those solutions are still funny to hear about today, right up until you understand exactly why they worked. Start with the pants, because this is where the whole pattern begins. Standard issue jungle fatigues in 1967 and 1968 had large, bellowed cargo pockets on both thighs, useful almost everywhere the Army had ever fought. Not here. Every time an operator crossed a canal or moved through flooded ground, which was constant in the Delta, those pockets filled with water and thick mud. The mud did not drain out. It sat there, adding weight to each leg, slowing the exact movement that kept a man alive in an ambush. A single second of delay caused by waterlogged pockets could be the difference between walking away and not walking away at all. The fix spread through SEAL platoons by word of mouth, not through any supply officer. Levi's 501 and 505 jeans. The geometry mattered. Loon open underwater. A SEAL climbing out of a canal in Levi's had the water sheet straight off him. The pockets stayed empty. The denim itself dried faster than jungle fatigue fabric in the Delta heat, and it shrugged off elephant grass, the razor-sharp vegetation that shredded standard uniforms like paper. Operators started mailing home for specific models by name. Former SEAL Roger Hayden described the resulting look years later: coral combat boots, Levi's, and a Rolex on the wrist. You could spot a SEAL at a glance, he said. Civilian gear had become the actual uniform of an elite force. That Rolex deserves its own mention. Military-issue watches of the era were not built for what SEALs and reconnaissance teams needed: split-second timing for fire support windows and extraction points where being 30 seconds off schedule could get a team killed. The Delta could throw at them, mechanically reliable with no battery to fail, readable in total darkness. Same logic as the jeans. If the issued gear fails the environment, you buy what actually works. Then there were the leeches, and this is where pantyhose enters the story. The swamps were full of aggressive tropical leeches that moved straight toward warm bodies and found their way through loose weave fatigue fabric at the cuffs and waistband. A man finishing a swamp insertion sometimes stood up with dozens of leeches already attached before he had taken a single step on land. Women's nylon pantyhose, worn under the jeans, solved this completely. The mesh was too tight for a leech to bite through, too smooth for it to get any grip, and it sealed the waistline with no gaps at all. Jeans over pantyhose created a barrier the Delta could not get through. Standard issue cotton soaked up water and held it against the skin for hours. In a place where feet stayed wet constantly, that produced immersion foot, the same condition that crippled soldiers in flooded trenches in the First World War. Men stopped writing home asking for food and started writing home asking for wool cushion sole socks or pure nylon socks instead, because wool insulates, even soaked through, and nylon drains and dries in minutes. Neither one was something the Army was issuing in enough supply. Every one of these fixes followed the exact same logic. The equipment built for a different war met a place it had never been tested against, and the men who had to survive that place solved it themselves, faster than any requisition form ever could. Now for the part of this story that surprises almost everyone hearing it for the first time. Pads. Not for any medical reason, though that happened too. For two field modifications that nobody in the Army's equipment design offices had ever considered. The first was boot insoles. A sanitary pad placed inside a jungle boot did two things the official insole could not. It cushioned the foot on long marches, and it absorbed sweat and the water that constantly worked its way into boots during river crossings and rice paddy movement. When it soaked through, a soldier pulled it out, dried it, or swapped in a fresh one from his supply. The official jungle boot insole simply was not designed to manage moisture at this level. A sanitary pad was, because that was its entire purpose, just aimed at a different part of the body. The second use was even more clever. Webbing crossing his shoulders. After hours of movement, those straps cut into the muscle and bone hard enough to rub skin raw, and a soldier with shredded shoulders eventually could not carry his pack properly at all. The adhesive backing on a sanitary pad stuck directly to the underside of the strap, spreading that weight across a wider surface and cutting the friction dramatically. Soldiers had accidentally discovered padded engineering using the most available adhesive foam material in the entire supply chain, a material that had been designed for something completely unrelated. Think about what this actually tells you. Nobody at Fort Benning had modeled shoulder strap pressure injuries from 60-pound rucksacks in monsoon terrain. Nobody in a design lab had asked what happens to a boot insole after 6 hours of walking through flooded rice paddies. A catch-up meant walking on raw shoulders and soaked feet for months. This is the same pattern you saw with the jeans and the pantyhose, just pushed one step further. It is not about comfort. It is about function under conditions nobody back home had accounted for. And once you see that pattern, the next set of solutions, the ones involving underwear and a rifle barrel, stop sounding strange and start sounding exactly like what they were. Engineering, improvised in the field, by men who did not have the luxury of waiting for a better answer. Now the part of this story that turns into an awkward letter home, and then into one of the most famous field fixes of the entire war. Standard issue cotton underwear in sustained heat and humidity was not just uncomfortable, it was a medical problem. infections and severe chafing at rates that showed up in unit medical logs as an actual operational issue. Men pulled off patrol because of something as simple as their underwear. The fix a large number of infantrymen landed on was straightforward. They stopped wearing it. No fabric meant no trapped moisture, no friction point, nothing sitting against the skin that never fully dried in the field. That decision is exactly where the phrase "going commando" comes from, and it entered American slang during this war for precisely this reason. For men who wanted some kind of layer without the cotton problem, the request home was blunt. Silk or nylon underwear, sometimes explicitly women's because that was what was available in stores back home in those materials. Silk and nylon do not hold water the way cotton does. Jeans, but the letters asking mothers and girlfriends to mail this home created some of the most delicately worded correspondence of the entire war, something more than one veteran has laughed about decades later. Now, the fix that almost everyone has heard of, even if they never understood why it actually worked. The condom, stretched over the muzzle of the M16. The M16 that troops carried into Vietnam in 1965 and 1966 had a real reliability problem that would not be properly addressed until the M16A1 modifications arrived in 1967. Its gas-operated system, the same feature that made it light and accurate, was badly intolerant of mud, water, and debris. If the muzzle went underwater during a river crossing, if mud packed into the barrel during a low crawl, if a man simply fell into a canal carrying his weapon, fire on command is not a rifle. It is dead weight with a strap. The fix cost almost nothing. An unlubricated condom stretched tight over the muzzle kept the barrel completely sealed during every crossing, every crawl, every fall into the water. And here is the part that makes it brilliant rather than just improvised. Nobody had to remove it before firing. The bullet punched straight through the rubber the instant the trigger was pulled, and the rifle fired exactly as designed. The barrel stayed protected during movement and functioned instantly the moment it mattered. A few cents of rubber solved a problem that had already gotten men killed, and that the official supply chain had not caught up to fixing yet. It is the same logic taken to its most serious possible conclusion, where the stakes were not comfort or moisture, but who fired first. Now the most serious modification in this entire story, because here the stakes were not comfort, not moisture, not even a weapon jamming. Here the stakes were who fires first. Mazig reconnaissance teams operated deep inside enemy territory, often far past where any friendly unit could reach them in time if things went wrong. The point man, the soldier walking first, carried an unequal share of the danger. In the triple canopy jungle of the Central Highlands and the border regions, contact with the enemy usually happened suddenly and at very short range, 10 meters, sometimes less. Between walking home and not walking home at all. SOG point men began wearing captured enemy clothing and carrying captured enemy weapons, not as a disguise for slipping past checkpoints, as a tactical weapon for the exact moment of contact. A point man in black pajamas or captured NVA fatigues carrying an AK-47 instead of an M16 presented a silhouette that an enemy patrol registered as friendly for roughly 1 extra second longer than an American uniform would have. 1 second at 10 meters decided who fired first. The sound reinforced it. An M16 has a sharp, high-pitched crack from its light, fast round. An AK-47 has a heavier, slower, unmistakable report from its 7.62 millimeter round. A sound every NVA and Viet Cong fighter had heard 1,000 times and trusted instinctively. Interviews with SOG veterans, most thoroughly in John Plaster's book on the history of America's secret commandos in Vietnam, where operator after operator described this combination of enemy uniform and enemy weapon as a deliberate, standard choice for the point position, not an eccentric one-off. Every single modification in this story, the jeans, the pantyhose, the sanitary pads, the missing underwear, the condom on the rifle, the enemy uniforms, comes from the exact same root cause. The equipment, built in a lab for a different war, met a place it was never tested against, and the men who had to survive that place could not wait for a requisition form to catch up. Nobody in the Rung Sat Special Zone was thinking about ingenuity. They were thinking about staying alive, one patrol at a time. The pantyhose kept the leeches off. The jeans drained instead of filling with mud. The pad kept a foot dry enough to keep walking. The condom kept a rifle firing when it mattered. The enemy uniform bought 1 second, and 1 second was enough. If you served and carried a fix like this, one that never made it into any official record, leave it in the comments. The men who lived it keep telling it. Share this, because it is too strange and too human to stay buried. To everyone who figured it out in the field, one improvised answer at a time, this one was for you.